explain. Let me explain this part here. God told Abraham in Genesis 15:9-10 to take me a heifer of 3 years old, a she goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. These were the primary sacrifice. And it showed you where the furnace, smoking furnace came and caught these up. So what it's telling you, when the furnace of God caught these up, that these had to be made sacrifices unto God. That God was going to catch these up, but the transformation, before the transformation, it came, these symbols came, that he spoke in parable, began here on earth, which had to go to heaven to be united with the ram. Because when God made a covenant with Abraham, he had no seed. When Ishmael was born in Genesis chapter 17, I believe, yeah, and when he had up in Genesis chapter 16, he bare Ishmael by his maid, which was Hagar, which was part Egyptian. God used this as a parable to show you that the part was that the covenant, he had to get that which was lost, which was caused by the fallen angels who bare children unto the daughters of men, which was the Gentiles. So Ishmael was born part out of the Canaanites, which would come from Ham, which was the younger son, which was down in Egypt. So this couldn't be, because these was black peoples. But God, the one that was called by the fallen angels, was the peoples whose skin was diluted because of the least pigmentation that the angels didn't have. So God had to get that man in the book of life. He couldn't take and put him on top because he was a defiled person with blemish. So God had to use a man which was not blemished, which would be symbolized by this ram, which would become Isaac. But through the transformation which God had to do, God had to create a mixture when he had Abraham to take and slay these creatures and put one with another, to mix all three of these beasts together, starting out with the seed pods, which would come from the Hebrew nation. He couldn't use Ishmael because Ishmael was part of a Canaanite which came from Ham, which was cursed. So he had to go and take and make the second part of the Gentiles. Even though that person was cursed, God made him an equal part of the covenant to the seed part of Abraham. And he made the seed part of Ham the lesser part, as the female part would cover the bottom part of this transformation. If you notice here, I got blue lines going to the ram. I got blue line going to, blue line going to the bullock, blue line going to the secondary ram, and this primary ram remained the same. This was after the 400 years how it came to be. God had to create a mixture. St. Matthew 13:33 reads, "Another parable spake he unto them, the kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven which a woman took, and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened." In other words, these here was the male, these were the 2 female, but these females in the 400 years, they had to transform themselves before they went into slavery into bullocks, a ram, and a ram. Because these 2 rams would symbolize that the man that was preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ after these mixtures would be, which would be John the Baptist, would be out of the same pedigree as Jesus Christ. This is God's word. This is the transformation in man. Once they get transformed into this, they had to go into slavery. And on the other side of slavery, after they come back, when God was preparing them to be born, to be made a sacrifice unto the earth, God showed you the symbol how they came in Exodus chapter 29 after the transformation had changed from a heifer to a bullock to a she-goat to a secondary ram, and this same ram, which was representing Isaac, would remain the same, because he had to make this Gentile, which was the she-goat, equal covenant with Abraham. This is how God does his work. Even though they came in as a Hebrew, but the covenant seed part would be made equal as 50% Gentile and Hebrew, with the Hebrew bearing the seed part, but yet they would be of the same. What God did, he used three sons of Terah. Haran died before his father, Genesis chapter, I believe, 16. Let me go see here. No other 16. Haran died before his father. But after Isaac was born, the Bethel, the youngest son of Ner, which was Ner and Milcah, they had bare a son. But down God caused Sarah to go barren all of these years because he had prepared the way for the, I believe, the 8th son of Ner, which was Bethel, which bare unto them Bethel. And Bethel, he taken on a Gentile female and married her. Once he married her, he was the seed of Terah. Abraham was the seed of Terah. And when Bethel married this female from there, she became the mixture of the Gentiles, which became the ram, which was Rebekah, which had a brother called Laban who was also, but God had to take that seed back up there in Jacob, and he had to take on and marry 2 daughters out of Laban, which he also was a part of the Gentiles, who took another wife of a Gentile. This was even the genetic color code in the chemical makeup of that body, equally to the seed of Abraham. Isaac was a complete black person. Once God had did this through this interbreeding, Jacob was part 70% 75% Hebrew, and his wife was 75% Gentile. So it divided the genetic color code up in the first 8 parts to 50-50. One which Judea came out of. In other words, when you look at what God did, no man could do this here. And he created a situation where the ram and the ram became 50-50, but through the interbreeding and the cleansing of the flesh, it increased itself after he taken on a wife of the Gentile, of the Canaanites, which was 100% black, and it increased the pigmentation. But the seed part that came through this part was 50% black and 50% white. But after the genetic mixture of that female of African descent, where all tribes taken on these women, because God had created confusion with Laban and Jacob, so he couldn't come back up there, because Rachel had stolen some from her fathers and put it in the camel, her false god, image of false god. And when she did so, It was forbidden not to go back up to the north.